So the god of death has come, and the life has passed out of Satyavana's body. So last week we started reading about what happened, or what Savitri experienced and felt after this. We are in the book that's called the Book of Eternal Night, which has 2 cantos. This first one is called Towards the Black Void, and then we have the journey in eternal night. She has to pass through this terrible darkness. But Aurobindo described to us the way that sometimes in very powerful moments of our life, human beings can experience a higher being within themselves or around them, protecting them and helping them. There was a very beautiful description of that. And then he said that this, in a moment's depths, was born in her. Savitri had this experience of her eternal being. And that spirit wakes up in her. So I'll read to the end of the section and a bit further. A presence was there that filled the listening world. A central all assumed her boundless life. A sovereignty, a silence, and a swiftness. One brooded over abysses. Who was she? As in a choric robe of unheard sounds, a force descended, trailing endless lights, linking time's seconds to infinity. Illimitably, it girt the earth and her. It sank into her soul, and she was changed. Then, like a thought fulfilled by some great word, that mightiness assumed a symbol form. Her being's spaces quivered with its touch. It covered her as with immortal wings. On its lips, the curve of the unuttered truth, a halo of wisdom's lightnings for its crown. It entered the mystic lotus in her head, a 1,000-petaled home of power and light. Immortal leader of her mortality, doer of her works, and fountain of her words. Invulnerable by time, omnipotent, it stood above her, calm, immobile, mute. All in her mated with that mighty hour, as if the last remnant had been slain by death. of the humanity that once was hers. Assuming a spiritual wide control, making life's sea a mirror of heaven's sky, the young divinity in her earthly limbs filled with celestial strength her mortal part. Over was the haunted pain, the rending fear. Her grief had passed away. Her mind was still. Her heart beat quietly with a sovereign force. There came a freedom from the heartstrings' clutch. Now all her acts sprang from a Godhead's calm. Calmly she laid upon the forest soil the dead who still reposed upon her breast, and bore to turn away from the dead form. Soul now, she rose to meet the dreadful God. Which way will you start? Yes.
The presence was there that filled the listening world. A central all assumed her boundless life. A sovereignty, a silence, and a swiftness. One brooded over abysses who was she.
Yes. So this refers to the source, Savitri's source, the source of all which she had seemed or wrought. This is the power which has been projected into cosmic space. So that is perceived as a presence. A presence was there that filled the whole world, and it seems as if the world is listening, waiting to hear what that presence will say. And then he says, a central all assumed her boundless life. Something took on, accepted that boundless life which Savitri was feeling in her. And it seems like it's everything, everything, the universal being. And this is all, but it's also the center. It's a central all, assumed, accepted, and took on Savitri's boundless life. It has the character of sovereignty, the power to rule. But it's also silent and swift. It can move fast. It is a being, a presence, one. And this presence is brooding over all the depths of existence, the abysses. An abyss is a very deep place in the sea. So here there's more than one abyss. There's abysses on all the levels of existence. But that one presence is brooding over all these abysses, like a great mother bird spreading out the wings and protecting and nurturing even these abysses, these deep places. And that one it is Savitri herself. Suresh.
As in a quiet rope of unheard sounds, a force descended, trailing endless heights, linking times, seconds to infinity. Illuminably, it gripped the earth and her. It sank into her soul, and she was changed.
Yes. As in a choric robe of unheard sounds. Sounds that can't be heard, and yet it's like a choir singing. A choric robe, and that singing, those special singing of those unheard sounds, creates a kind of clothing, a robe, for a force with capital F, a very, very high force which is coming down from great heights. It's coming down, and as if behind it there's trailing lights after lights after lights, endless lights. So this force makes a connection between the moments, the seconds of time, and infinity. This is the force which can connect the transcendent world and the human world. This is the Supreme Divine Mother. So this force descends, it sinks into Savitri's soul and brings about a great change, a transformation. Bevel.
Girt.
Oh, girt, yes. Girt is like putting on a belt, girdling, going around in a circle. So this force surrounds the earth and her. And connected with this idea of girdling is the idea of strength. When you have to do something very difficult, you gather up all your strength and put it around you. Yeah.
Then, like a sword fulfilled by some great word, that mightiness assumed simple form, her being's faces quivered with its torch. It covered her as with the immortal wings. On its lips, the curve of the unuttered truth, halo of wisdom's lightnings for its crown. It entered the mystic lotus in her head, a thousand-petaled home of power and light.
So he says that the descent of this force, it comes into her, she's changed, and then it's as if a thought is fulfilled by some great word, as if what has been abstract gets expressed in a more concrete way in the form of words or a mantra, a vibrating word with which can be communicated. No? So that's a kind of next step of manifestation of the thought, is when it gets expressed in a word that perfectly expresses it. So similarly, the mightiness, the power of that force took on a symbol form, a shape. And she's feeling very, very vast. All those wide spaces of her being quivered with the touch of that mightiness. It covered her as with immortal wings. Again, this idea of the protecting wings coming around. And this symbol form is the form of a being which has not only wings but also lips. These lips are curved in a smile. These are the lips that can speak the truth, but the words have not come yet. The truth is unuttered, it hasn't come out yet. But there's a smile that indicates that the truth can come out. And above the head, there's a crown, a kind of halo. In sacred pictures, we have this shining light. So these are the lightnings of wisdom, the powerful lights of wisdom that are around its crown. And this symbol form enters into this chakra in the head of Savitri. It enters there. That 1,000-petaled home of power and light. This is the chakra that links the individual being with the universal higher being. Chandra.
Immortal leader of her mortality, sure of her works and fountain of her words, invulnerable by time, omnipotent, it through above her form, immobile it.
Yes. So this being, this force which has come into her, entered into her in this symbol form, is the leader, the power which is leading her human being. This leader is immortal. This is her eternal form. That's the one now who is doing her actions. That is the one who is the source of what she will say. That power is invulnerable. It can't be harmed or damaged by time, by the passage of time. It is all powerful, omnipotent, all powerful. So that presence, that power is standing above her, calm, immobile, it doesn't move, mute, it doesn't speak, it's silent. Gomson?
Over in her mighty
Hour.
As if the last lemon had been slain by death. Of the humanity that once was his.
Thank you. So everything in her, her whole nature, everything that she feels as herself, mated with, matches that powerful moment. So it's as if when death, or now death, has destroyed everything that was human in her, and only the divine part, the immortal part, is left. The last remnant, the last little bit of humanity in her. It's as if that has been destroyed by death. That last little bit of the humanity that was once hers. And the divine part takes over. Gangalakshmi.
Assuming a spiritual wide control, making life see a mirror of human sky. The young divinity narrowed les limbs, filled with the celestial strength, her mortal part.
Yes. So the young divinity, the youthful divine part in her, that is one of the characteristics of the Supreme Mother, is youth. You know, we have a garden of youth, and in Matrimandir it's one of the 12 powers of the Mother, youthfulness. So that young divinity now is inhabiting her earthly limbs, her body, and it's taking up, it's assuming a spiritual wide control. It's controlling everything. It's turning the sea of life. Her life has widened like an ocean, and that sea is like a calm mirror of the sky of the higher consciousness. So in this way, this young divinity is filling her mortal part. The mortal part that's left is the body. That becomes filled with divine strength, with celestial strength. Mathilde, would you read?
Although once he contemplated, even briefly, her grief had passed away, her mind was still. Her heart beat quietly with a sovereign force. There came freedom from the heartstrings clutch. Now, all her acts sprang from a Godhead's crown.
Yes. So that pain that she was suffering, that haunting pain, before Satyavan died, she was haunted by the pain of the foreknowledge, and this fear tearing at her human part. That's all over. And even her grief, her sorrow at the passing of Satyavan has passed away. Her mind is still, her heart is beating quietly with a sovereign force. There's a feeling of strength and calm there. So she's become free from the clutch, the tight hold of the heartstrings. It's a complex image, this, about the heartstrings. Sri Aurobindo often speaks of the heart as if it's a musical instrument with many strings, and on those strings emotion plays, many feelings. But also the heartstrings connect us to everything that we are attached to. So it's that clutch, that holding on of the heartstrings is something that it's very difficult to get rid of. And it's a decisive movement in the spiritual life when the heartstrings are rent, when they are torn so that they can't hold the higher vital being anymore. So that's happening, or this has happened. She's no longer tied by all those feelings and attachments. So there's no disturbance. All her actions are coming from a state of calm the calmness of an individual divine being, a Godhead. Those heartstrings are so sensitive. They quiver and make a sound with everything that happens. So it's a great liberation when they are torn, and the heart can be very, very calm and steady and strong.
Firmly she laid upon the forest soil, the dead whose foot reposed upon her breast, and bore to turn away from the dead form. So now she rose up to meet the dreadful God.
So this is the first movement that she has made. She was sitting there with Shraddhavan in her lap, and she didn't stand up. She kept him close to her bosom. And then Aurobindo has described this great change that comes over her. And now at last she lays down Shraddhavan's body on the soil, and she turns away from that dead form. She rises up, stands up to meet that dreadful God, that presence of the God of death that she feels there before her. So Alice.
That mightier spirit turned its mastering gaze on life and things, inheritor of a work left to its unfinished from her halting past. When yet the mind, a passionate learner, toiled and ill-shaped instruments were crudely moved.
You can read the next two lines.
Transcended now was the poor human rule. A sovereign power was there, a godlike will.
Yes. So this mightier spirit that she's become, that has been released from her and that has entered her from above, that mightier spirit, now it turns its gaze, it looks, and it has a mastering gaze, a gaze that has power. She turns to look at life and things. And Aurobindo tells us that that mightier spirit is inheritor of a work that has been given to Savitri unfinished from her past, when she was a human being. You inherit something, somebody dies and leaves something for you. They may leave you money or property or debts, but sometimes they leave to you some work that is to be done. So it's as if that human part of her has died, but there's an unfinished work that now she has to complete. That's a work from her halting past, when she didn't walk clearly and straight, when there were stumblings and doubts. Because the mind was working. The mind, it's a learner. It's a learner who has a lot of feelings and intensity. It has to work hard. And ill-shaped instruments, all the powers of the individual being, of the body and the mind and life, these ill-shaped instruments, they were moved crudely by that mind, the toil of that mind, using all these instruments that make up the individual being. Now that is all over. Now she has transcended, she's gone beyond that poverty-stricken human role, the very limited role and possibilities that we have as human beings. Now a sovereign power was there, a power with real power, with ruling power, and a God-like will, a will that can decide and make sure that its decisions are implemented. Andres.
A moment yet she lingered motionless and looked down on the dead man at her feet. Then, like a tree recovering from a wind, she raised her noble head, fronting her gaze. Something stood there, unearthly, somber, grand, a limitless denial of all being, that wore the terror and wonder of a shape.
So she has stood up, but without moving, she stands and looks down at the body, at her feet. And then we have seen this, no? When there's a strong wind, it bends the tree over, and then the tree can stand up straight again. So it's like that. She, like a tree recovering from a wind, she raised her noble head. And in front of her, she can see this something standing there, this unearthly form, a subtle form, somber, dark, and yet it's grand, it's majestic. But this something, this form expresses or embodies a limitless denial of all being. It says no to existence, to all existence.
I missed the time to ask you. The ill-shaped instruments could be moved by the mind.
Yes.
Not mightier gaze?
Hmm?
It's not by a mightier spirit?
No, it's talking about the past, before the mightier spirit took up this work. Yes. He's telling about the time of a halting past, when the mind had to work hard and had to use or shape these ill-shaped instruments, using those. That's what we are doing, yes. But she goes beyond that. She has to take up the work that's left to her, the mission that's left to her from her human past. Very, very powerful lines, these three. No? Something stood there, unearthly, somber, grand, a limitless denial of all being that wore the terror and wonder of a shape. There's a form, this form of the god of death, which says no to all existence. And then comes a description of this being. Venkat, you would read?
In its apparent eyes, the tenebrous form bore the deep pity of desponding gods. A sorrowful, ironic curve with the dreadful lips that speak the word of doom, eternal night, in the dire beauty of an immortal face, pitying a rose receiving all that lies,
All that lives.
forever in its fathomless heart, refuge of creatures from the anguish and the world pride.
Thank you. So its eyes are appalling, They make you feel dreadful. If you are appalled by something, you are horrified. This form is made of shadows. It is tenebrous. But in them there is pity, deep pity. The deep pity of those gods who are given the job of destroying things. It has lips. It even has a kind of smile. The lips are curved. It's an ironic smile, a smile which has some contempt and mockery in it, but at the same time some sorrow, sorrowful irony. These are the lips that speak the word of doom, of disaster. His appearance, it's eternal night. In the dire beauty of an immortal face. Dire means dreadful, fearful. So he's a god, he's beautiful, but that beauty is dreadful. So this eternal night gets expressed in this immortal face. It's pitying. It is welcoming. It's receiving all that lives. It welcomes it forever into its bottomless heart, that deep heart that can receive everything into it. And it offers a refuge, a safe place. This is a place where creatures, living beings, can take refuge from their anguish and world pain, the pain of the world. We think of death like that, no? That it will give us rest and peace at last from all the suffering. That's what he pretends.
Sometimes we say it's a dire need. That means it's
And very intense and dreadful need. Yeah. Praveen.
His shape was nothingness made real. His limbs were monuments of transience, and beneath brows of unwearying calm, large, godlike lids, silent beheld the writhing serpent lie.
Writhing.
Writhing
Yeah.
serpent lie.
When a snake is hurt, it writhes, it wriggles this way and that. That movement is writhing. So his shape was nothingness made real. It feels real, but it's nothingness. It's very terrifying contrast. His limbs are huge, like monuments. But a monument reminds you of something. That's what a monument is, no? Of transience, that everything must pass, everything must change, everything must die. And he has these brows of unwearying calm. He will never get tired of this endless calm. There are large eyes, large god-like lids, the eyelids, no? Silently, they are looking at life and seeing life as a writhing serpent which has been injured and is going to die. The life force is often imaged as a serpent, as a snake. Bon. Yes.
And moved their kindness to life on changing days. They descend up on torpedo flattered past, survived the passing of unnumbered stars, and shelters till the same immutable fall.
So these large godlike lids are unmoved. They don't blink. They look very steadily. And they have a gaze, a wide, unchanging gaze that goes on beyond time. It's timeless, not limited by time. But they have watched all the cycles of time coming and going without any use, unprofitable. Nothing useful has come out of these endless cycles of time. And those eyes of his, they have survived, they've seen the passing of unnumbered stars, the stars being born and dying. And still these same immutable, unchanging eyes are there watching everything. Joanne.
The two opposed each other with their eyes, woman and universal God. Around her, piling their void, unbearable loneliness, upon her mighty, uncompanioned soul, many inhuman solitudes came close.
Yes. So they look each other in the eyes, and they are opposing each other. Who has the stronger will? Who is stronger? The two opposed each other with their eyes. Here's the woman, and here's the universal God, death. And Savitri feels around her many inhuman solitudes coming close, piling up their empty, unbearable loneliness. She feels this pressure, this suggestion of being alone and helpless. But they're pressing on her mighty, uncompanioned soul. She is alone, but she is powerful, and the great are most powerful when they stand alone. So there's this pressure of something inhuman. It doesn't mean only just not human, it means cruel, inhuman. Shilpa.
Vacant eternity's forbidding hope, laid upon her their huge and lifeless look, and to her ears silencing earthly sounds. A sad and formidable voice arose, which seemed the whole adverse world's.
No, we'll stop there. Yeah. That voice sounded like the voice of the whole world of hostility and falsehood, everything that's undivine. There's this pressure of solitudes, of loneliness, and there's a pressure of eternities, not just one eternity, but many eternities, but all empty. They don't allow hope. They are forbidding hope. So that it's as if they are beings looking at her with their huge and lifeless look. As if there's a pressure of the whole emptiness of space, infinite space. So this is the influence of this being. And now he's going to speak to her. Today we won't read what he says, we will do that next week. But Aurobindo describes his voice. It is sad, there's a great sadness in it, but it's also very, very powerful, formidable. It rises and it seems to be the voice of the entire world of adversity, everything that says no to existence, to everything that we value and that keeps us alive. So we'll stop there for today.
Her presence was there that filled the listening world. A central all assumed her boundless life. A sovereignty, a silence, and a swiftness, one brooded over abysses. Who was she? As in a choric robe of unheard sounds, a force descended, trailing endless lights, linking time's seconds to infinity. Illimitably it girt the earth and her. It sank into her soul, and she was changed. Then, like a thought fulfilled by some great word, that mightiness assumed a symbol form. Her being's spaces quivered with its touch. It covered her as with immortal wings. On its lips the curve of the unuttered truth, a halo of wisdom's lightnings for its crown. It entered the mystic lotus in her head, a 1,000-petaled home of power and light. Immortal leader of her mortality, doer of her works and fountain of her words, invulnerable by time, omnipotent, it stood above her, calm, immobile, mute. in her mated with that mighty hour, as if the last remnant had been slain by death of the humanity that once was hers. Assuming a spiritual wide control, making life see a mirror of heaven's sky, the young divinity in her earthly limbs filled with celestial strength her mortal part. Over was the haunted pain, the rending fear. Her grief had passed away. Her mind was still. Her heart beat quietly with a sovereign force. There came a freedom from the heartstrings' clutch. Now all her acts sprang from a Godhead's calm. Calmly she laid upon the forest soil the dead who still reposed upon her breast, and bore to turn away from the dead form. Soul now she rose to meet the dreadful God. That mightier spirit turned its mastering gaze on life and things, inheritor of a work left to it unfinished from her halting past. When yet the mind, a passionate learner, toiled, and ill-shaped instruments were crudely moved. Transcended now was the poor human rule. A sovereign power was there, a godlike will. A moment yet she lingered motionless, and looked down on the dead man at her feet. Then, like a tree recovering from a wind, she raised her noble head. Fronting her gaze, something stood there, unearthly, sombre, grand, a limitless denial of all being that wore the terror and wonder of a shape. In its appalling eyes, the tenebrous form bore the deep pity of destroying gods. A sorrowful irony curved the dreadful lips that speak the word of doom. Eternal night, in the dire beauty of an immortal face, pitying arose, receiving all that lives forever into its fathomless heart, refuge of creatures from their anguish and world pain. His shape was nothingness made real. His limbs were monuments of transience, and beneath brows of unwearying calm, large godlike lids, silent beheld the writhing serpent life. Unmoved, their timeless, wide, unchanging gaze had seen the unprofitable cycles pass, survived the passing of unnumbered stars, and sheltered still the same immutable orbs. The two opposed each other with their eyes, woman and universal God. Around her, piling their void, unbearable loneliness upon her mighty, uncompanioned soul, many inhuman solitudes came close. Vacant eternities, forbidding hope, laid upon her their huge and lifeless look. And to her ears, silencing earthly sounds, a sad and formidable voice arose, which seemed the whole adverse world